his presence. He spoke, when was it, September?
October. September, October?
October, yeah, October. Chris spoke to us and gave us a really great info on talent and recruiting. And so today, very provocative. I'm not going to give away any secrets, but tonight is going to be a very interactive session. For those who are virtual, you will be, able to ask your questions in the chat, so don't be shy. Chris is also going to encourage you to take yourself off mute and speak to your questions if you prefer to do that. I have the camera facing the room, so as you're walking around, they'll be able to see you and everybody else in the room, so just so everyone knows.
We just want to share and bring up the presentation.
Yep. And then I'll let Chris give his formal, this is his life.
Sort of. Something like that. All right, let's just get set up here. Really quick before I bring up the presentation and share the screen, is everybody who is remote able to still hear me? Give me a thumbs up or just nod your head. All right, thank you. Very cool. All right, so we're going to share.
Oh, the video.
All right, here we go. Folks on Zoom, can you see the presentation? Folks in the room, can you see the presentation?
Yes.
All right, yes. Josh, we're good to go. All right, well, good evening, everybody. First of all, thanks for having me back. All right, thank you for inviting me back to speak again with more SHRM. I had a really fun experience the first time around. I've enjoyed thoroughly getting to know this group, getting to know Dan and Shelley. So to be able to come back and speak on a different topic, right? I think we've talked a lot about the Great Resignation, and we've talked about the Great Reshuffling, and talent still continues to be an issue. So coming from the perspective of talent, I want to keep it close to that wheelhouse, but I want to shift gears a little bit and talk a little bit more about culture, right? And this is a presentation that before tonight has only ever been presented to students, all right, to college students and emerging professionals. So this is the first time that I'm taking this topic, this 7 phrases, and bringing it to a group of HR leaders. And the idea, the challenge tonight is to take the information that we're going to be discussing and to approach it and talk about it in terms of how we look at our organization's culture and how we might be able to reframe that culture in a positive way. So as we jump in, we make sure, what are we doing? All right, we'll see if this starts working. If not, I'll use the space bar. Okay. So a little bit about me. I've been in the human resources field for 15 years now, in talent acquisition, also diversity, equity, and inclusion, and organizational development and training. So I've had a lot of fun with topics such as these, whether it's bringing people in, helping train, develop them, promote them, and making sure that we're creating organizations that are equitable, that are fair, organizations where people feel comfortable bringing their whole selves to work. That is a big part about what I do. I worked for 13 years at Enterprise Holdings, and I currently am the manager of University Relations and Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Crestron Electronics up in Bergen County, New Jersey, although I am a proud Morris County resident. I've been speaking professionally for about 6 years now, and I also pride myself on my love of game shows and my awful, awful golf game. So we'll try and stay away from that a little bit today as well. Just do that. Our clicker going, if you wouldn't mind going to the next stop button there. All right, some different ways to stay in contact with me as well. I put some contact cards around the room. I will make sure that everybody gets one of these on your way out. I don't hand out business cards. I hand out these social media contact cards in case you want to connect with me after the presentation on LinkedIn, Instagram. We will have the video from the presentation tonight up on YouTube as well as on Twitter. So a bunch of ways to keep the conversation going. That is the goal, is to not just have this be a quick 1-hour thing, but to have this continue beyond tonight. All right. Still not working? No, not just yet. That's right. All right, so before we jump into what we're going to talk about today, I want to have a little bit of fun with what we're not going to talk about today. All right, there are 7 very specific things that we are going to address. But I actually brought a list of things that we're not going to be discussing, that we're not going to be talking about. So if you'll just bear with me for a moment, I want to get these out of the way. I don't have them memorized yet. Right? So I'm going to promise you I will not be bringing up any of the following 42 topics. So tonight, with all due respect, we will literally not close the loop, land the plane, circle back, touch base, wrap our heads around this, sharpen our pencils, put a face with a name, take a 30,000-foot view, drink from a fire hose, address the elephant in the room, get disruptive, peel back the onion, give the green light, run it up the flagpole. We will not think outside the box, drink the Kool-Aid, break the silos, put a pin in it, step up to the plate, get our ducks in a row, pick brains, get granular, burn the candle at both ends, suffer from a case of the Mondays, bust chops, earn stripes, use teamwork to make the dream work. We will not throw anybody under the bus. We will not do more with less. Huddle up, tee it up. And last but not least, we will not take it offline, take it to the next level, shift the paradigm, boil the ocean, pick low-hanging fruit, move the needle, and at the end of the day, despite our limited bandwidth, we absolutely will not be par for the course. No, thank you. There we go. All right. Oh, good. How are we looking? So everyone is excited because what that means that we are not going to discuss today are platitudes. Thank you. I really don't have room in this presentation for your typical business platitudes, those sayings that look really great on a poster hanging in your lobby, right? I'm always a big fan of the one that has the 5 matchsticks that are lined up, and the first one is fully lit, and the second one is sparking, and it says, "Attitude is contagious, is yours worth catching?" Oh, that's so nice. It looks really, really cool in a corporate office. But that's not what we're here for tonight. That's not what we're about tonight. I don't want to talk about platitudes. What we're going to talk about are 7 real, honest, authentic phrases that we need to reintroduce into our cultural lexicon for the benefit of our organizations. And before we start talking about those 7 items, I have a little game to play with the folks in the room. So, wherever you are, we're going to get you moving a little bit. All right? I want to ask you just to check underneath your chair. There are 7 chairs in the room that have a number taped under them. If you have one of those numbers, please remove it from your chair. If you don't have a number, check the chairs close to you, and you can have that number. Nicole's got number 1. She's starting us off today.
You can do it. You can do it.
They are all going to have an equal amount of work. I promise. I promise. Okay, so I know who has number 1. Who has number 2? Number 2 want to hold up? So number 2 has not been found. Where's number 3? I saw number 3. There we go, number 3. Thank you. Number 4? Do we have 4? We have 4. Do we have 5? Anybody have 5? Okay, so we're missing 5. 6? 6? Okay, and 7. Do we have 7? We have 7. Okay, so Nicole, you are going to have number 1.
Thank you.
There's scenario number 1. We said we don't have a 2, right? Who would like number 2? I will take a volunteer. There we go. Thank you so much. And with such enthusiasm. Thank you. Number 3?
Have another glass of wine. Hey.
You got this? All right, who's got number 4? There we go. Here you are. You have scenario number 4. Number 5. Which one, number 5? No, number 5 we didn't find. Who would like number 5? Okay, there we go. Number 5 right back here. 6. And sir. All right, and 7. Okay. So what I'm going to invite our 7 volunteers, quote unquote, to do is open up your envelopes and pull out the sheet of paper that's inside. Oh, and for the volunteers, if you root around in the envelope a little bit, there's actually more than a piece of paper in there. Dig in there a little bit. For your trouble, for your work tonight, there's at least a cold brew on the line for you. There's a Dunkin' Donuts gift card for our 7 volunteers. $5 each just to go get yourself a cup of coffee this morning when you're still thinking about tonight's presentation. So I promise it'll still be on your mind when you wake up tomorrow and you're gonna need coffee as a result.
And we don't consider that a bribe at
100%. Or are we going to tax you for this? Are there any payroll people in the room who are gonna be really mad at me for doing this, right? You have to tax them for that. All right, so Nicole, I'm going to bring, where's that microphone? Here we go. Oh, indeed. You asked such a great question before, so we have to get you back on the mic. And I'm going to leave the microphone out in the crowd, because I think you've realized by now I don't really need to use it. So, Nicole, would you please stand up and read your scenario to everybody?
Testing. Scenario 1. A CEO works closely with the sales team. At the start of the year, the CEO offers an all-expenses paid trip to Hawaii to whichever salesperson exceeds their quota the most. In subsequent meetings, he encourages the sales leaders to work together, team up on sales calls, and protect the company. Much to the dismay of the CEO, the salespeople refuse to work as a team. When one salesperson stumbles upon a lead in another territory, they don't share it. The CEO calls a meeting and calls them all selfish, demanding to know in the middle of the meeting who didn't share leads and why they didn't listen to the CEO's instructions regarding working together. Nobody says anything, but after the meeting, the sales members decline.
The sales numbers
The
still
sales numbers decline.
Perfect. Nicole, thank you very much. Can we have a round of applause for Nicole? I thought it sounded good when I wrote it. Now I really think it sounds good if you've read it. I feel really good about this scenario now. Does this sound somewhat familiar? Sales goals are created by somebody in a leadership position, and they say, okay, I want you all to go out, I want you to meet these goals, and I want you to work as a team and work synergistically. However, I've created a compensation structure or a reward structure that does not reward teamwork. It does not create an atmosphere or a culture where you feel like you can work together well. How many of you have experienced that in some workplace situation you've been in? Okay, most of us, okay, good. Anybody here work in compensation and you've seen this firsthand, where it's like to build a comp structure that has the opposite effect of what you want? Right, we see that from time to time. So now here's the CEO in front of these salespeople saying, you did not do what I told you to do, and now I am unhappy, you're all selfish, you've done the wrong thing. When in fact, in this scenario, whose fault do you think this is? Let's talk about this. Who's at fault in this? Why did those sales numbers decline, and why are people still not working synergistically?
There's no reward for it.
Okay, there's no reward. So whose feet do you place that at? The CEO? Okay. I suppose we could make the argument that the salespeople could have listened and said, well, I think that if we all work together as a team, we'll probably all end up selling more and we'll all meet our quota. Yes, that's probably true. But here you have a CEO who creates a bonus structure that is in opposition of the outcome that they are seeking, and then blaming the salespeople for not doing what they said. And this is a situation where personal accountability on the part of the CEO was missing. So our first phrase, a very provocative phrase, is, are we still not going on the clicker? Okay, that's okay. So our first phrase here is, that's on me. That's on me. The idea that we can take a certain degree of personal responsibility and say, well, that didn't go exactly the way I wanted it to, and I'm willing to take personal responsibility for that. And that's what was missing in this specific example, right? And what we have when it comes to personal accountability, I know the light works. You see it right here. This inner circle, right? Errors, blame, fear, cover-ups, information flow, knowledge of reality, and it keeps going around and around in this endless cycle of blame, because nobody is able to break the cycle and say, hey, that's on me. I think that I could have done something differently, or we or our team could have done something better. Nobody has the courage to break the cycle, to take the risk, and to get out of this problem, to innovate and effectively solve problems. Does this sound familiar? Okay. How many of you have worked at some point in an organization with a leader who refused to take accountability for his or her actions and instead wanted to shift the blame to other people. How many of you have dealt with that? I got a hand right away, right? And did you love it? Wasn't it the greatest place? No, I'm getting a no. Okay, so we didn't enjoy working there with the culture of blame and scapegoating. Instead, we wanted to work in a place where we felt like we could collaborate and where people could say, hey, that's on me. Hey, we have a clicker. Outstanding. All right, so there are 8 major differences in organizations that focus on blame versus focus on accountability. And I hope you can all see these okay. In an organization that focuses on blame, that organization's members avoid problems for fear of calling attention to themselves. I don't want to be the one on the hook for this because I've seen what happens. I know how this ends and I want no part of that. So they deny it. I didn't know. I don't recall that. I don't remember seeing that. I don't think I was on that email. What's your name again? New phone. Who dis? Right? Does it sound familiar? Finger pointing. It's them. Wasn't me. Excuses. I didn't have the resources. Must have been on PTO that day. Unrepentance. Nope, not sorry. Not my problem. Your problem. Negligence. I'm not going to bother looking into this. I'm just going to turn a blind eye because if I see something go wrong, then either I'm on the hook for it or I lose my plausible deniability, so I'm just going to avoid it altogether. Right? Insecurity. I wonder if I'm going to get blamed for something today. Defensiveness. Don't you blame me. This is your fault. Sounds like a terrifying place to work. I hope they get their pay equity under control, right? At least as long as I know how much they pay, I'll know how much I'm willing to put up with. Versus characteristics of accountability, where people are willing to say, that's on me, that could have been better, we could have done that differently, let's reflect on it, let's take ownership of these mistakes, and let's move on together as a team and make it better. There's a really interesting article. It's actually not an article, it's a scholarly journal entry. And I only brought 5 copies of this one, whereas the other articles in the middle of your table I brought 20. That's because this one's 27 pages long. So if you're a real consumer of human resources, like I am, and you find this interesting and you want to pick up a copy of this, then I brought 5 of them. And if we run out of copies, I have the PDF, I will send it to you, and to all the folks who are on Zoom, you will get a copy of this. But it really focuses in on the concept of individual accountability and distills it into 4 characteristics of an accountable organization. When an organization is willing to have people who take accountability for themselves, they can identify the action that they need to take in order to reach their goals. There is no scapegoating, which eliminates that fear, that negligence, that blame culture that gets created. It takes away the idea of people being victims in the organization, and that way of thinking focuses more on empowerment than victimization, and alleviates procrastination so that way we can land the plane, haha, I said we weren't going to say that, so we can take care of handling the situation more quickly. Does this make sense? Okay? Everyone would much rather, I think, work in an organization that practices this sort of culture than one that focuses on blaming and scapegoating. All right? Now, I want to see who has number 2 and where that microphone is. Nicole, would you find who has number 2 and pass them the mic, please? I know we got a volunteer for number 2. Who volunteered for number 2? There we go.
Okay, scenario number 2. During a monthly staff meeting, a newly hired operations manager at a manufacturing company presents metrics illustrating positive results in safety, retention, and morale, but declining production efficiency. Despite the good news, the ops manager is pressed as to why the production numbers dipped, and the ops manager provides an answer that doesn't make sense. After the meeting, the VP asks the ops manager to hang back and challenges the accuracy of their statements. The ops manager fumbles with their notes, does not make eye contact, and after 20 uncomfortable seconds states, "I don't know."
Great, thank you. Round of applause. I appreciate that, thank you. So we have a situation here, we have an operations manager who comes into a staff meeting and says that, hey, there's some really good things going on here. Safety numbers, good, no accidents in like 2 days, that's awesome, right? Retention numbers are up. No one laughed at my 2 days comment, I'm gonna have to tweak that a little bit. No, Our retention is good. We have people that are staying with us. Isn't that important right now? Okay, yes, but production numbers have dipped. Production numbers are down at a time when we desperately need to churn out product. What's going on? What happened? And this ops manager in this scenario says something that just doesn't match up with what's going on. And somebody on the outside hearing this might say, I don't know if they're telling the truth. I don't know if they're being honest or if they're being transparent. And then so a VP asks them to hang back and really puts a little pressure on them and says, you know, what was all that you were talking about? And finally this ops manager says, I don't know. I have no idea. So they realized that they didn't have an answer for the declining production numbers. Tried to say something that sounded good, got called on it, and then eventually admitted that they just had no idea why. So first they showed a lack of integrity, and then they showed a lack of information, or a lack of knowledge. Has anybody been in a meeting like that, where you have that uncomfortable sort of, I don't know if that makes sense, or the person who's fumbling for the answer, and you just want them to just get it over with? It's very uncomfortable. Right? I've been in situations like that, which is why I hope I don't get any really difficult questions tonight. Right? So I'll find out. Powerful phrase. Simple. It's okay not to have the answer or maybe not have the exact information present. It is never okay to lie about it. It is never okay for us as an organization to create a culture, us as HR leaders to create a culture where people feel like they can say something just to get it out there so that way they don't feel like they're the victim of all those things we talked about before, the blame and the scapegoating, right? And as a matter of fact, if we followed scenario number one, phrase number one, and create a culture where people say, that's on me, then we should also be able to have a culture where people say, you know, I probably should have that, but I'm going to find out. And I'm going to get you that information. And if I don't know where, then I'm going to ask where to find it. All right? Does that make sense? It's a very simple three-word phrase. Now, the caveat. Who can tell me what the major, kind of the footnote, the caveat to I'll find out is? If you say I'll find out, what does that mean?
Better follow up.
You damn well better find out. Right? Because what that is you're making a commitment that you have to follow up on, and if you don't, then it's almost as bad as the first scenario where you lied your way out of the situation. So I challenge us as leaders and as HR professionals to create cultures or to empower people to be able to say, I don't know, without making them feel as though the world's going to come down on them. Oop. Okay. So out of Inc. magazine, this is a really interesting quote about this specific topic. Replying with a shrug of your shoulders or a curt, I don't know, shows that not only do you not have the answers, but you also aren't willing to put any work in to find them. All right? Scenario number 3. Who has scenario number 3? All right. Thank you, sir. Such good teamwork. I love it.
Scenario number 3. An HR manager reports directly to a CHRO and has a terrific working relationship. Some projects have recently come up, however, involving the COO, CEO, and some of the functional leaders from the business. The HR manager is dedicated to doing their part to drive success for these projects, but lately has started feeling like they have multiple bosses, not just one. One week, the HR manager is asked to complete 5 different time-consuming tasks by 5 different leaders. A few days later, the CHRO sits down with the HR manager to discuss some missed deadlines and apparent stress the HR manager has been under.
Thank you so much. Round of applause. I appreciate that. Now, I mean, this never happens, right? We never feel like we have multiple bosses, right? Everything is so streamlined in organizations. I have a chain of command. I have one person I report to. They're the only person who ever asks me to do anything. Does that sound about right? Because if you break the chain of command, you get the code red. That's what I learned from a few good men, right? No, it's not true. We are often asked to do different tasks for different people who, what a shock, don't necessarily communicate about all the tasks that they're putting down on you. So we end up feeling overwhelmed and feeling like, well, we have a straight line to a direct supervisor, we have dotted line responsibilities to multiple people, especially if those people hold a particularly lofty or influential title, right? As in the scenario, a CEO, a COO, or a functional division head. So we don't feel like we can say no. So how do we create a boundary? How do we create a boundary? And I'll create a boundary for you. There's your, when do you need this by? In an email, in a conversation, somebody says, can you take care of this for me? I really need this particular report. I need this project. I need this presentation. We ask for reports a lot in HR, I've heard, right? I've heard that over the last 15 years, that reporting is kind of a part of it, right? Yeah, KPIs, right? Yes, thank you, exactly. So being able to say, when do you need this by? As a way of setting up a deadline that enables you and your organization to prioritize, right? So being able to have a conversation within an organization to say, listen, if you're pushing a lot of work on people and their supervisor isn't aware of it, we want them to be able to ask for what the deadline is. If something is particularly important, you need to communicate that to them, right? Because here's the inherent danger. Hey, when do you need this by? And then you end up with your calendar looking like this: tomorrow, 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 tomorrow. Especially because I think I think this is cultural, but I think there is a thing in HR where we might struggle to say no. Have you heard this before, right? Nicole's shaking her head, yeah. I mean, that's me. Why? Well, because we want to be of service. We want to help. We want the organization to succeed because of some of the things that we do. So we don't want to say no, but it still is important to have some of those boundaries put up so that way we don't feel overwhelmed or feel like we have multiple bosses and our own tasks don't slip off the radar, right? Deadlines also have a very powerful psychological effect on us. When we have a deadline, when we have some sort of an outcome that's due by a certain time, it triggers something in the brain that creates a sense of consequence. I need to have this done by X time, X date, or else this is the negative consequence. And it doesn't necessarily need to be a career-altering consequence where it's, otherwise I will be written up, I will be fired, I will get in trouble. But sometimes it's, this person will not be able to do what they need to do, and I will feel that as though I let them down. And sometimes that's a more powerful motivator for us. I don't want to let this person down because I value them as a colleague, as a friend. So having that deadline in your mind creates the sense of, okay, I need to have it done by this time so that way I don't have this negative outcome. Triggers fear, triggers adrenaline, not a bad kind of fear, right? A more good, a motivating kind of fear of, well, I better get this done so that way I can make sure I can avoid the negative consequences, and that energy turns into action. All by the very simple question of when do you need this by? Instead of saying, yeah, I'll do it, when do you need it by? I need it by next Wednesday, right? Instead of the alternative of not being able to keep up with our own work, which can look a little intense, right? Thanks, it's great to be working with you. When do you need this by? Well, we need it by the 18th at the absolute latest. Okay, I'll set an alarm for 5 a.m. on the 18th. No, you can just email me the file. You don't have to get up early to come here. Oh no, I won't even start this project until 2 a.m. the day it's due. This alarm is so I know when to start panicking. I really love this one. This one does not actually describe me because I am absolutely not waking up at 2 a.m. Otherwise, it's accurate. All right, let's go on to our next scenario, which I've already spoiled with the clicker here. This is scenario, I believe, number 4. There we go, number 4.
Okay, scenario number 4. A newer employee on the talent acquisition team is reviewing candidates in the applicant tracking system one day and notices a discrepancy in how data is reported. This discrepancy could mean information is misrepresented to senior leadership. The employee shares this with a colleague and asks if they should approach the senior director of talent acquisition with the problem. The colleague shakes their head and says, wrong. The senior director is just going to tell you not to bring them problems, only solutions.
And I love the fact that you added that editorial ooh in there, because you knew exactly what this colleague was thinking when they said that, right? How many of you have heard that at some point in your professional careers? Don't bring me problems, bring me solutions. Yeah, seeing some nodding heads, right? We've been there. And on the surface, if you take it in a vacuum, the idea of don't bring me problems, bring me solutions, okay, it sounds like it might make sense, because what's the thought process? Why do we say that? What do you think the goal is of don't bring me problems, bring me solutions? What do you think? Anybody? Yeah?
They want to get ideas on how to fix it.
They want to get ideas on how to fix it. All right?
We don't have time to wait.
Okay, you know what, that's a really, maybe it cuts down on time that would be spent on what they view as unnecessary brainstorming, right? In order to just have an answer brought to them that they can either affirm or deny. I think that's a great answer. What else? And anybody who's in the Zoom room, if you have any thoughts as to why somebody would say or what the goal is behind don't bring me problems, bring me solutions, please type it in the chat, or you can unmute and share with us. I want to make sure that the people who are in the Zoom room are with us as well. Anybody else? Anybody else have any thoughts in this room? Virtual folks, anything? Okay.
I think they don't want to hear complaints, they'd rather have some ideas on how to resolve something.
Yes, absolutely. I don't want to, it's not even just that I don't want to hear your problems. I don't want to hear you complain. I don't want to hear whining. I don't have time for that in my day. Which, when you really drill down into it, is kind of a selfish way of looking at things. It's an unempathetic way of looking at things. Now, I'm a sucker for the concept of servant leadership, right? I'm one of those folks who believes that if you're in a leadership position, you lead, you exist to empower the people around you. So if your idea of leading your people is, don't you dare bring me your problems, then you're not doing your job as a servant leader, right? However, it is fair to say, well, I don't just want you bringing your issues in and dropping them at my feet and abdicating responsibility for them. That is where I have an idea comes into play. A very powerful idea can be the catalyst that solves a problem or identifies new problems. And the idea culturally for us as leaders to think about here is, how are we empowering others to innovate? How are we letting people within this organization know that while you shouldn't feel as though you need to solve every problem without input from the people around you, that your ideas are welcomed, and that you should feel comfortable bringing them to the surface. All right? So the idea behind don't bring me problems, bring me solutions. And by the way, one of the articles that I put in the table, on the tables here, and that I have up here that you can grab on your way out, is from Harvard Business Review. The problem with saying don't bring me problems, bring me solutions. This was a fantastic, very quick read about the flaws and the issues with that way of thinking. I brought one for everybody here, and for everyone who's on Zoom, I will send you the PDF of the article. I highly recommend it. But the perception behind it is, well, it increases empowerment. If I'm telling you not to bring me problems, bring me solutions, I'm empowering you to think of how you would solve this issue. That's what's going on in my head. It fosters solutions orientation. I want people to come into my office thinking about how to solve problems, not just bringing me problems. Okay. That makes logical sense. It prevents complaint culture. And somebody mentioned this specifically in the Zoom room, and they nailed it, right? The idea of complaint culture, not bringing me your issues or your complaints. But in reality, what we think increases empowerment can decrease empowerment. Because now maybe I'm less likely to want to take on a problem or address a problem because I'm concerned, I'm anxious, I'm nervous that I'm going to have to solve it first without input from the people whose input I value. It can foster fear and intimidation. Not everybody really wants to go into every problem with a solution already without consulting people, especially without consulting leaders. And it prevents healthy venting. I think the last 2 years have taught us anything, it's the value of a pressure valve. I think we've all learned emotionally about how important it is sometimes to just be able to go and talk to somebody, a mentor, a manager, a supervisor, a colleague. We all have that work best friend. I hope we do. I hope we all have that work best friend that we can go and say, listen, I had a really tough day and I just need to let it out a little bit. Right? Are we creating a culture where people feel as though they can bring problems and bring solutions and that they won't be punished or looked down upon for either one? Right? And so the progression may look a little something like this. I have a problem for you to solve. There are instances in which that is what has to be done. This is above what my understanding of this company is. I am not in a position where I can solve this problem. However, I see it's a problem, and I am bringing it to you because I know this is your wheelhouse. There are times in which it's appropriate to say, I have a problem and I really need your help, or I need you to solve this. Right? Then there's, I have a problem for us to solve. It's It's a collaborative way of looking at that situation and looking at that problem. Here's the situation. I am not laying this at your feet solely. I am here to come up with a solution alongside you. Collaboration. I have an idea as to how we can solve this problem. It's a great way of approaching it. Nowhere in any of these scenarios is it don't bring me problems, bring me solutions. It is a progression of empowerment. I recognize the fact that I can't solve this problem alone, I need you. I recognize that we have a problem, I think I might have some input, let's work together. We have this problem, and I have a thought as to how we can solve it, and I want to feel comfortable bringing that to your attention. Are we all good on this? Does this all make sense? Do any of these three things bother us? Right? We feel pretty good about this so far?
Yes.
All right. How many of you have been told, don't bring me problems, bring me solutions? I expected like 2 or 3, not half the room. Anybody want to share their experience without using names? Especially if it's your current company and your coworkers are in the room.
I mean, it's nothing but like, you know, a former manager of mine basically felt that that was a way of coaching.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want to, as Carrie said, don't come in and complain and drop your problems on my lap. If you're going to come to talk to me about your problem, I want to know that you've thought about it. So when you show up, it's not just, here's my problem, you fix it.
Mm-hmm.
It's, I have this problem, this is where I am, and they meet you where you are, and then you talk about it.
I had a very effective manager at a prior company who, when I had a scenario like that where I had a problem and I brought it to his attention, one of the first things that he said to me was, well, what do you think?
Mm-hmm.
Right? It was, again, creating and empowering and a safe space of, I welcome your ideas, your innovations, partially because you've had some before, and some of them weren't half bad. Right? I'm actually going to bring him up again in a little bit, another catchphrase of his that made my list of 7. Actually inspired my list of 7. All right? Any other questions on this? All right, who has scenario number 5? Okay, in the back, thank you so much. Microphone on its way.
A junior manager is in the midst of their busy season with some PTO upcoming. After signing off on Friday at the end of the normal business day, the manager puts up an out-of-office message and disconnects for time with their family. After hours on Friday, one of the directors this manager works with sends a request in and receives the out-of-office. The following week, while the junior manager is still out, the director sends a follow-up. Upon returning to the office, the junior manager sees the missed emails and begins a response email with, "I'm so sorry, I'm not getting back to you until now, ...
Thank you so much. Round of applause, please. Can't do this without our volunteers. So, manager's getting ready to go on PTO. I have time off. I'm going to go spend time with my family. We all should do that. Disconnect every once in a while. Shuts off the computer right on time. Puts up the out of office. Does everything appropriately, right? We're good with this so far. After hours on a Friday, request comes in. Out of office comes up. Hey, I'm sorry. I am gallivanting on the beach somewhere with my family, and that is so much more fun than whatever it is that you're emailing me about. So kindly wait until I return, and then we'll address your issue. Or you can reach out to this person, this person, this person, or this person. That's the way it should go. Even though most out of offices are probably, I'll be checking emails periodically, and if you really need to reach me, here's my cell phone number. We need to get away from that a little bit, right? But, okay, here's a manager doing it the right way and putting up a barrier. This is my personal life. The director sends a follow-up, still during out of office, gets the out of office again. And the mentality of that manager when they return from PTO, what is the first thing that that manager does? Apologizes. I am so sorry that I used the paid time off that I am entitled to at this company to recharge my battery and spend time with my family, so that way I missed your clearly very critical question that was so important that you sent it to me at 7 o'clock on a Friday. Been there? Right? This is why I'm personally a big fan of, if I am checking email on the weekend and I'm sending anything to my team, I use the Outlook feature, which delays the delivery until Monday morning. Big fan of that, right? Because just because I might be checking email on a Saturday, all right, or I'm watching my beloved Green Bay Packers on a Sunday.
Play the San Francisco 49ers.
Easy now, easy now. Shelly and I have this thing. You'll hear more about this. Watching, and just because I'm watching the football game, I'm not one of those people who can just watch the football game and do nothing else, so I'm probably checking some emails. But I'll delay the delivery until 9 o'clock on Monday because I don't want my team feeling as though they need to respond to me on a Sunday. Right? Even though they're Giants fans and they really have nothing better to do. I'm sorry, Giants fans. I apologize. No, that stirred people up a little bit. Now I know where the line is. Okay, good.
But Chris,
Yeah, Shelley.
I want to,
That's true, Floral Park.
but yeah, you really have no Jet fans. That's perfectly okay. This is good. It's really, really okay. But one of the other things, another trick that I started doing is putting. We have teams. I put myself in, look like I'm offline.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Because when people see that you're online, like late on Friday or Saturday or wherever, they start talking to you. It's like, no, I'm invisible. I'm really not here. I'm just,
There's a psychological thing, the fact that in teams, when you're there, it's green and it's a check mark. There is nothing else I need to know that I can go, right? But when you are busy, it is red, right? That has been ingrained in our mind, right? Here's the other thing, apologies. We apologize a lot, but apologies also create an imbalance in other areas from a DEI perspective. And on the tables, you'll see there's a really interesting article from Inc. magazine. Women really do apologize more than men. Here's why, and it has nothing to do with men refusing to admit wrongdoing. It's actually because of what we view as being wrong, right? It's an interesting take. Whether you agree with it or not, it's a very provocative discussion piece. But I think that there is this belief out there, and I think it's probably true, that women are more likely to apologize than men, right? So it also can create an apologetic culture where you feel like you need to apologize for these perceived slights, can negatively and adversely affect female employees. I have a hand in the back.
Lois Frankel, what is it, 101 ways that women sabotage themselves. I forget the name of the book,
Yes.
but it's what I did my thesis on when I took my master's in HR, and it talks about how they apologize and all the other things, and how they never get the corner office.
Oh, Nice Girls Don't Get the Corner Office. Great
Yes,
book.
I forget. Yes, and it's great. It has all that in it. Yes.
Love it.
The
Love it.
other infamous word is just.
Oh yes.
Oh, right, kind of
And I read that something too.
almost diminishing what you have to say by putting qualifiers in front of it, right? Sorry, but just want to, all of these things. But when it comes to this apologetic culture, how do we put a positive spin on feeling as though, well, I know that you expected this from me, but because of reasons that were beyond my control, I didn't get to it. Or how about just the fact that we're all humans, we're not robots, and that sometimes an email does fall off of our radar for a few days, right? I'm not going to ask who has the inbox with the most emails in it. I don't know what the over-under will be, but it does happen. Things get buried. We're only human. So is it possible that instead of starting everything with, sorry, I apologize, we start it with a positive and we put the positive onus on the other person? Thank you for your patience. Thank you for your patience. That manager could have come back from PTO, seen the emails from the director and said, thank you for your patience. I'm just back from PTO and I'm spending some time on this. Do you have some time to discuss it maybe this week now that I'm back? Still keeps the barrier up, shows that I care about what it is that you're dealing with and what you have to say, but I'm not sorry I went on PTO. I'm not sorry that this wasn't something that caused me to interrupt my life right away. It's perfectly okay. In fact, there's a lot of different ways to say thank you for your patience, right? Or anything close to it. Thank you for your comprehension. I appreciate the fact that you understood what I was talking about. I appreciate your flexibility. Love that one, right? Instead of, sorry I need to move this meeting because I have a sick kid or because I had another meeting come up. But no, I appreciate your flexibility. I'm building a relationship by putting the positive back on the other person. And there are so many others, and I'll send you this list. I'm not actually going to read all 12 of them. I think I'm hitting you all with enough lists tonight to not have to read every single one of them. Good, Sean.
Chris, I have a question. So, not even a question, it's more of a comment.
Yeah.
In certain cultures, I know because I've been sitting there listening to people talk about this. Some people think it's rude sometimes if you don't say, I apologize for the delay, or if you don't put, I apologize in, they almost expect it. Because we've created this culture where when you don't say that, you just say, thank you for your patience. Oh, they didn't even apologize for taking so long to get back in touch with me.
Right, and I think part of it is, again, from a cultural standpoint, I'm not talking about macro culture, I mean more micro-organizational culture. Being able to break that cycle a little bit to say, you know, you have to respect somebody else's time, space, and the fact that they're only human, and they really do appreciate the fact that you want to work with them so closely. So don't be expecting an apology. Let's save apologies for when we're really sorry. That's my big thing. Right, is I have a 5-year-old son. Shelly and Dan know him because he loves popping on our planning calls, right? And he will, I'm Liam, I'm 5. He's the cutest thing in the world, right? And when I talk to my wife about how we're going to raise him, one of the things I said very early on is, I never want to use the term, you owe them an apology. I'd rather explain why he should feel remorse, why he should feel sorry, and let him come to that conclusion. I always hated that when I was growing up. Well, you owe them an apology. Apology is not currency that can be owed. It's something that you actually feel or you don't feel. I think that's at the crux of this statement. We can probably do a whole hour just on the concept of apologizing, right? I think, and just on the cultural aspect of it, we could probably get a full hour out of it. But I want to move on to number 6 because we have a half hour left and I want to have room for Q&A. All right, number 6. And I saw you proactively went over, grabbed the microphone. The excitement.
Thank you for understanding.
Yeah. Yeah.
Scenario 6. A division VP is hired to lead a new functional engineering team. The team itself is filled with more junior employees who aren't fully matured as professional engineers. The division VP was hired on the strength of their academic achievements and is often regarded as a subject matter expert with a, quote, brilliant mind. This VP likes to hold one-on-one meetings, but often feels frustrated because their message and discussions don't seem to connect with the junior team members. The human resource business partner decides to ask team members about the new VP and learns, while they all respect the VP, they feel talked over and they get lost during the meetings. But they don't want to feel stupid saying they don't understand the VP.
Thank you. Excellent. Round of applause, please. Thank you. So this is an interesting scenario because it's not necessarily anybody doing anything wrong. It's just a bit of a communication gap, right? Here you have this division vice president who by all accounts is infinitely qualified to do their job, is very smart, very knowledgeable, and probably speaks at a very high level about their subject, and probably with a lot of jargon and a lot of specificity that a junior team member might not be as prepared to follow along with. But they don't want to signal to this VP that they are not intellectual enough to have that conversation because they don't want to be excluded from those meetings. So here we have a situation in which our communication is our gap. So this is the phrase that my old manager, this guy Dave, still friends with him to this day, one of the best bosses I've ever had, tremendous motivator. I picked this up. He never taught me this. I just noticed that he did this. And this was the inspiration for this entire presentation. I don't want him to know that because then he's going to expect me to take him out for dinner or something like that. When he was explaining something to me, especially that was very important, I know he trusted that if I had questions I would ask. But early on in our one-on-one meetings, he would stop several times, 3 or 4 times if he was explaining something in depth, and say, does that make sense? In fact, you even noticed, I've said that 3 or 4 times tonight, not planning to. It's now just part of my lexicon as what a member of my team, Christian, says is a comprehension check. Let's take a moment. Let me make sure that what I said, something I've said 1 million times, that makes all the sense in the world to me, still makes sense to somebody else who's in this conversation with me, right? So this boils down to communication. This is one of my favorite topics of all time. I've probably spoken about 100 times at different colleges and universities on this particular topic. There are 4 major forms of communication, right? You can generally boil communication down into 4 quadrants. Anybody know what those 4 are? ask for, and folks on Zoom, type them in the chat, and let's see if we can get all 4 of them. Shout them out. What's a form, a type of communication? Verbal communication. Thank you for starting us off strong. Verbal communication. The words we choose, what we say, vocabulary, volume, pitch, variation. Or as my mom used to say when I was in trouble when I was 12, it's not what you said.
That's how you said.
It's how you said it. When I heard that, I knew that middle name was going to come out, Christopher William Fitzpatrick, and I was in big trouble. It's not what you said, it's how you said it. Well, you know, thanks, Mom. Some really good management advice there about verbal communication. She's absolutely right. It's not always what we say, it's how we say it. That's verbal communication, right? What else? We have verbal, that's 1. 3 more to go. Nonverbal, thank you, right? Haptics, body language, eye contact, smile, attire, punctuality, everything that can either enhance or diminish your verbal message. In fact, there are studies that say that effective communication is more due to nonverbal than verbal factors. Sometimes between 55 and 70% of our message is wrapped up in our nonverbal communication than our verbal communication. It's really fascinating. We get so wrapped up in what it is that we're saying that we lose sight on all the ancillary things that help deliver that message. So that's 2. Verbal, nonverbal. Dan?
On the chat, we have written communication.
Written communication is number 3. This is a really rock star group, and I love it. Written communication. This is where I get to one of my favorite stories of all time. Written communication. This is your emails. This is your text messages. This is your resume, your applications, your documents, anything that you write, anything that is verbal but on paper or on a screen, right? Now, fun story. Colleague of mine named Jennifer. She hired me into my first real full-time job where I ended up getting into talent acquisition and human resources. She recruits here at St. Elizabeth's University, remains a good friend to this day. She was confirming an interview with a college senior, a gentleman, whose name I don't remember and I wouldn't share it anyway. And she was confirming his interview for later in that week, and he wanted to say thank you to her, because that's what you do, for setting up the interview. So he's on his iPhone and responds to the email, "Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to speaking with you soon." He thought. Sort of. He actually spelled one word wrong. But that's okay. You know why it was okay? He's on his iPhone. What do you have on his phone? Autocorrect. I heard uh-oh. Who said uh-oh? You know what's coming, right? Uh-oh. Autocorrect caught the mistake, and autocorrect says, "Don't worry about it, interviewee, I've got this." He doesn't think to proofread the email back and says autocorrect would fix it anyway, sends it off, and he sends my colleague Jen a message that says, "Thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to sleeping with you soon." Jen, to her everlasting credit, forwards this email to the rest of the talent acquisition team, and all it says is, "I hope he buys me dinner first." She was such a good sport about it, and as I understand it, the kid was mortified. Came into his interview, says, "I am so sorry. I just want you to know I appreciate the," and just, whatever it was. He didn't get the job, not for that reason, but I guarantee you he never sent another email to an interviewer without proofreading it first. Autocorrect, not a catch-all. Written communication, really important. We see this a lot now as human resources professionals. The number of conversations I have about college students coming in and how bad written communication gets because of the text and the social media world that we live in, I think it's underscored that there's a skills gap with written communication. And what's number 4? We have verbal, we have nonverbal, we have written. What's number 4? I've actually already given it away. What's number 4? So visual is a really good guess. That's part of nonverbal. That's a really good answer. And by the way, every talk I give, this is the last one that gets shouted out. Anybody in Zoom want to take a stab at it? I didn't send the slides out ahead of time. Okay, so here's the hint. We're all talking about so far the ways we communicate outward. There it is, listening. Listening. How do we receive information? And that is why, does that make sense? is such a critical phrase because we think so much about how we communicate outwards. We communicate verbally, we communicate non-verbally, we communicate in writing, and we get all of that done, but do we actively listen? And does that make sense? Is a great way to signal to another party, I am actively listening to you and your comprehension is important to me because I value you. Are we as leaders creating a culture where active listening is just as important as written and as written, verbal, and nonverbal communication? Does that make sense?
I have a quick comment.
Please.
I've heard that can be perceived as condescending. So maybe like, what do you think about that? Or are we on the same page?
Yep.
As alternatives?
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. If there's any concern about feeling as though it's condescension, there are so many different ways you could package it. The idea behind it is not necessarily use these specific words, but it's the concept. And is this concept built into our culture where we care about the comprehension of those around us and that we're not talking over people? Nicole, question, comment? You look like you have something on your mind.
I always like my mom always say, know your audience.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's hard to glean that when you haven't met these people and you're coming into a room. But I have an understanding of where they are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, also another great way of doing it is if you're in a room, stop me if you have any questions. Can be a powerful way of approaching it. What you're signaling is if there's anything that is unclear, I want you to feel comfortable asking me. If you have questions for me and you want to pull me aside one-on-one, please do. But you're creating a culture where people feel comfortable coming to you with questions. Last but not least, anybody else?
I'm just going to
Hey,
just
Chuck.
make a comment, just to share, Nicole, something that I try to do, especially if I'm facilitating training for leaders, is at the very beginning, is to kind of establish why we're here and why they're important to what we're doing. And it's really about them, not about like me. I'm just, sort of the conduit to get the information to them. So if you miss the opportunity to ask questions or to participate, you actually miss the purpose and why you're here. So we talk about that in the beginning and then make it all about them.
Love it. Love it. And this shouldn't come as a surprise. It's not necessarily that we unlocked the key to human resources, but it's amazing of how much of it comes back to the concept of empathy and how powerful that is in all the things that we do and say, right? You hear it said so many different ways, but just coming back to the human side of human resources through empathy and through whether it's a comprehension check or any of the things we're talking about, that really can be what you distill it down into in its finest version, right? We have one more phrase. Who's got number 7? Who wants to bring us home? There we go.
The marketing team at a mid-sized company is undertaking several critical projects with hard deadlines. The work is stretching them. The division leader is a motivator and a cheerleader who pride themselves on keeping people energized and engaged. A high potential and upcoming associate marketing manager is really struggling with a hefty workload brought on by the trust they've built with the team and several personal circumstances that they are not sharing with the team. When asked how they are doing, this employee puts on a brave face and says the right thing. After a particularly stressful day, this high potential employee walks into the leader's office and turns in a resignation letter, shocking the entire team.
Thank you. Round of applause. High tension situation, a team with a lot of deadlines, everybody is stretched really thin. High potential employee says quote unquote the right thing. I'm fine, I'm good, I'm here with the team, ready to go, and all those platitudes that I threw on the floor. Who picked up my platitudes? I just realized that somebody came up and grabbed them. All right, that's Shelly, you're a ninja.
They're on the table. It was on the floor.
Oh, I know.
Like litter.
I was going to walk over them, like trying to make a statement. Right?
It's a paper floor. I gotta pick it up.
I didn't even notice you do it. That was great. Right? So what is the phrase that comes to mind when we're talking about a team that's overworked and ends with a situation where somebody who's a high potential valued member of the team ends up quitting? Where's the responsibility here? Why did this person quit and who bears responsibility for this? Let's throw it out there. Oh, leadership, all right, right? So we said that this manager is is a cheerleader, a motivator, probably a coaching sort of an archetype, right? Rah, rah, rah. We can do this. Let's go get them. And it sounds all really good. Probably had more of an opportunity to connect with the team a little bit better and have a deeper understanding. But if the team member is always saying what they expect to hear or what they want to hear, then is the leader getting the full scope of information? Are they able to act accordingly? Are they necessarily able to see that this person is not being truthful? Not always, right? So that brings us to, yes, thank you. I don't want to restart just yet. There you go. That's okay. Things will always happen. All right? So that brings us to our last phrase. Possibly our most powerful 3 words tonight. I need help. A lot of conversation, and I've noticed this in a lot of these SHRM meetings, the ones that I've been able to pop in on, is mental health continues to be a very hot topic. Mental wellness continues to be a very hot topic. Right? I have more of those contact cards. Don't worry, I'm going to pass them out at the end. Sometimes we just need to be able to say, I need help. I need support. I need something that's going to take me out of this place I'm in, even though everybody else is stretched pretty thin. It can be a very difficult thing to say. Does your organization, the organization you lead, this organization that we hope is empathetic and cares about its employees, does it have a culture where an employee who is in a bad place not only knows that they can, but they would feel comfortable coming in asking for help? It's a really tough question to ask. But it might never be more important than it is right now. Do you need help? And if somebody comes up for help, not just giving them the hotline number, right? Not just taking them through checking the boxes, but having a real conversation about how can we support you? What do you need? What can we do? Because we value you. Very important. One of the hardest things in the world to say. As a matter of fact, I think one of the 3 hardest things in the world to say, and this sort of brings us all together. Our first phrase being, that's on me. It's very hard to say I was wrong. Our last phrase being, I need help. And then, of course, absolutely impossible Worcestershire sauce. I don't even think I'm saying it right. 3 hardest things in the world to say. All right? So what I want to do, since that is the end of my slides, is I want to throw a little question out to the audience and say, of the 7 things that we talked about, was there one that really resonated with you? That maybe your organization does very well? Maybe you think your organization has the opportunity to do better at one of them? Or just you as an individual? Because this isn't all just about what we're doing in our organizations. A lot of this is also about you. You know, how can you benefit? So was there one of these 7 that really resonated with you? And this goes for the folks that are on Zoom too. Please put it in the chat, or if you want to unmute yourself and share. But anyone in the room want to share?
I think the last one was interesting because high potential employees need help too. And turnover with high potential employees and also MBA candidates, et cetera, management training. Turnover is incredible. They need training too in order to lead others, or you're guaranteeing a lack of success with solving some of the problems you brought up in scenario number 7.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
I go on and on about this forever if you want me to.
What I really think is that properly motivated, we could probably have full conversations about all 7 of these topics.
Yeah.
I need help, and really dipping into that, the mental wellness piece. Very powerful. We already talked about how much we think we could get, how much mileage we could get out of the apology culture, right? And the gender discrepancy in apologies. Right? We could probably do that with a lot of these. But what really I value about what you just said is that particular one moved you, right? And that you took something away and you found value. And that really does mean a lot to me, is the fact that you found something that was valuable in this conversation out of a kind of a cafeteria of choices. Anybody else have one of the different ones when they want to share? Dan, anyone on Zoom chiming in? Not yet? Okay.
I can comment on another one.
Please, yeah, that'd be great.
The first one about sales and how
And you remind me of one of my favorite books. It's called Up Is Not the Only Way. Right? Up Is Not the Only Way. Anyone ever read this one? It's a concept of talent agility and the belief that the corporate ladder structure, the one linear corporate ladder structure, is dead. Right? And the way, when I was reading this book, I was picturing less and less of a ladder and more of a cargo net. Right? You can go up, you can go diagonal, you can go side to side. It's almost like a Wonka Vader. It's a dated reference, I know, but I love that movie. Right? So when it comes to that sales example that you gave, I see this a lot in sales. We see it in a lot of areas, but especially with sales. Top salesperson crushes their numbers all the time. Really does a great job, creates a relationship with the clients, everyone loves them, and they're making revenue hand over fist, so that way somebody in leadership goes to them and says, well, you're so good at doing this, I'm going to put you in charge of a team of 10, and you're going to create 10 clones. And they're all going to sell exactly the way you did because you're so good at it, you must be able to teach other people how to do it. And what a mistake that can be. There are folks out there who are phenomenal individual contributors because they love to do what they do every single day. But if you ask them to lead others, they may not be leaders. And so they don't develop other people. In fact, what it does is it takes them away from what they love doing and they teach people bad habits. And it erodes the entire culture. Right? The book is Up Is Not the Only Way. It's about talent agility. It's a really interesting topic. And when you say sales are special, that's one of the places where I've seen that exact topic, to be able to say it's okay to succeed without getting into management. It's not for everybody. Right? We're kind of at the tail end here. So what I want to do, just last but not least, is if anybody wants to grab any of the articles or the source material, especially on that last one, there's an HBR article I also brought called How to Tell Your Boss You Have Too Much Work, which is a very interesting topic. There's also the Inc. article on women apologizing more than men. There's actually a total of 5 different pieces of source material up here because I wanted to share all of this research and this knowledge that was done on this topic. Everybody who's on the Zoom call, we'll make sure that you get either the links or the PDFs of these articles. And then for everyone who's here, if you haven't gotten one of the contact cards, if you do want to stay connected, keep the conversation going, please come up and grab one of these. With that being said, I just want to thank everybody for spending a little bit of time on a beautiful Wednesday afternoon to talk about these topics that are so important to all of us. I love doing this stuff, but the participation is what makes it fun. So thank you so much for coming out. I really do appreciate it. Shelley, Dan?